Are you telling me that the Fakertarians want to make... They have things on there. They're not even like humans. And they're like making comments. They try to make the most degenerate comments.
Archie, get the fuck off my stream.
What's the thing with like that what's his name? Hudak guy? Like, yeah. Who is, I will say, Nick, on the show you were at there, right? Amongst them, he's the smartest.
I believe Fakertarians has done more damage to the Libertarian Party than anybody Fakertarians tries to damage. Because it's a bunch of people who have no official position. They're just tweeting on their own personal timelines. And Fakertarians goes and screenshots and publicizes this is what's wrong with the Libertarian Party.
Fakertarians has lost so much credibility that no one is willing to... It's the boy who cried wolf. Like, they might actually be right one day. Maybe there'll be one day where there's an actual Nazi that someone puts on our show. We're just going to be like, eh.
Well, the Fakertarians hop on and they're like, ooh, that's a anti-Semitic, and people are like, that's anti-Semitic, and I'm like, first of all, you fucking idiots, I'm half Israeli.
And while I'm at it, you know what? Fuck that page, those Fakertarians. Fuck that page too. Fuck all those guys. They're on my shit list too. Fuck them, giving me fucking shit for going on fucking Stefan Molyneux's show. Hey, they're fucking the Fakertarians one, who actually pissed me off more because from what I've been told, there's like a couple decent people attached to that. Fuck them. Fuck those guys. They're gonna fucking give me shit for fucking going on Stefan Molyneux's podcast to advocate against war because you didn't like that I called him great.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 44 of the Fakertarians podcast. I'm your host, John Hudak, along with Jeremy Kantorowicz, Archie Flower, and our tech guy. Today joining us, we have Jen Moore, the former chair of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. How are you doing today, Jen?
Hey, I'm good. I've never seen that intro before. It looks like I'm in good company.
That's a fun one. That's got to be my favorite of ours.
I really don't take, the opinions of people who joke about date rape and, things like that in high esteem. So, when they throw that stuff at me, that's usually the baseline that I, keep it at. So,
understandable. So, what years were you the chair of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, just before we get into things?
Yeah, just this past year. I was the Eastern Vice Chair for 3 years prior, and then I ran for chair this last year, just predominantly to make the Molten Maneuver successful. That was my only goal. I didn't really want to stay in leadership more than 4 or 5 years, so I was going out at the right time. It was a rough year. A very rough year.
So when did you first get involved in the party in general?
I went to the 2017 convention, and a lot of the people who are no longer friends are the people that I hung out with then. It was my birthday weekend. I told my husband, I want to go to a Libertarian convention. He's like, really, Jen? So I went. I got belligerently drunk. I had a great time. I said I would never get into leadership or be elected to office, and within a year, I was the Eastern Vice Chair, and I was elected as the township auditor. So the rest was kind of history.
I feel like that's how it happens.
Yep.
So getting into a little bit of the Mises stuff, when did you first meet Michael Heiss? Was it prior to the whole Mises caucus thing, or was that after?
It was prior. Michael Heiss lives in my home county. We both live in Montco. And he lived in Lancaster, I believe, at the time that I came in. But he moved to Montco, I don't know, 2018 or 2019. I never really had a problem with him. He had his big, in the Fenn rally in, 2018, and I thought that he was a good organizer. It was 2019 around the Maj Touré stuff that him and I kind of started having a falling out because I just had a very poor personal interactions with Maj because we both live right here in this corner of the state. And I kind of withdrew from his campaign and said that I would rather focus on the Molten Maneuver because I just felt like it was a better use of my time. And you know how it works. Like all of a sudden there were these huge conspiracies that I was trying to platform him from national and run him out of the party. And even to this day, they're still slinging this crap. And none of that had anything to do with me. I just decided to work on something else because I didn't like the guy personally. I mean, that was all it was. It says something about your activism where just withdrawing your support is enough to make everybody mad at you, right?
It's funny because I know they're talking about running Maj for vice president in 2024 too. Was there something specific that went down with that campaign that kind of soured you on it?
Well, for me, I was supposed to meet with him to talk about, some of the things that he'd been saying. I was party leadership, and he didn't show up. And when he didn't show up, we kind of sent him a "Hey Maj, what happened?" text, and the answer was a typical Maj answer. So, and then like Michael Chastain had just given us like $4,000 for a lawsuit for a couple of our candidates who went through. So, I was very sad to see all that happen. And I publicly apologized on behalf of the party, that we really appreciate everything he's done for us. And that, caused some rifts. But really, it was just a matter of, I saw that how Maj was calling everybody marshmallows and cursing. And, then I had the bad interaction with him where he stood me up. And I just said, I don't have any role as the Eastern Vice Chair in local campaigns. I'm just going to back away and work on something else. And we won 47 elections because I worked on something else. And I'll tell you what, I reached out to his campaign manager, Janine, around ballot access, or at the time we had turned signatures, and said, do you need me to look over your papers or anything? Which is more than I did for most of our local candidates. So it's not that I completely tuned them out. I did say, do you have any questions? Is there anything I can do for you before you turn it in? And she said, no, we're good. And that was kind of the last that I heard. It turns out the guy only got 2 votes in his own precinct. He had never voted in an election before that day. And I don't need to say anything about him. You can look at his campaign financials, and that says everything you need to know. I mean, that's...
Yeah, and I saw the results from that campaign, too, and it was like 14th out of 17th or something like that. It wasn't...
Didn't some guy that rode his... Yeah, like some guy that rode his bike around town got
more,
got more votes.
Last. He got 0.47%, which, he was running a campaign for his own reasons. And I think that his campaign financials show that, what he was doing with that campaign. So, if anybody's interested, that's the place to look.
So prior to that campaign, you didn't really have any bad impressions of the Mises Caucus.
Okay,
it was just
well, I'll tell you, I am one of the admins on Delegates Unofficial. And during 2018, we had all of the stuff with, Josh Smith ramping up, running for chair, and Michael Heiss defending him, and all the, Ron Paul wasn't invited stuff. And a lot of it just seemed very immature and just outrage for outrage's sake. Michael Heiss announced that he was running for Eastern Vice Chair, and I announced against him because I didn't think that he would bring professionalism to the role. I didn't really have any problem with him. I just wanted to see the party go in a different direction, and he dropped out of the race after I announced. But I didn't have a problem with him at that point, no. I would say my real I wasn't really an anti-Mises person until the last 6 months.
No, I see that happen with a lot of people. I was involved with Mises at one point. Archie was involved with Mises at some point, and then we just kind of flip on him after a while after some things go down. I think that's very common.
They had a lot bigger problem with me for a lot longer time than I did with them. To tell you the truth, I really admired a lot of their energy, and I still don't think that all of them are bad. It's just it's disheartening how they just buy into the propaganda. And if you've been with them, you understand.
Yeah, there's a very cult-like, I would say, mentality there, where you have to buy into everything they say. And if you don't buy into everything they say, like if you don't like one of their major candidates or something like that, you kind of get otherized and pushed to the side. I've seen that happen with a lot of people. I've seen it happen with Archie. I've seen it happen with Joseph Howe out in Iowa. It seems very common.
Well, I have situational awareness enough to the point where, when all of that was going down, I left on my own.
Yeah.
I left their groups knowing that I wasn't welcome there, and they removed, Kevin and Steve and all of, the rest of our team, within weeks or days of me leaving. But, it was just one of those things. If I'm not wanted here, I have other things to work on. I'm not going to waste my time,
Yeah.
So
post-Maj, especially while you were chair, what was your experience like with Heiss and the rest of kind of the Mises Caucus leadership? I would say not necessarily like the rank and file member that might be okay, but the really hardcore ones.
So, the other big story that they like to circulate is that I installed a socialist as the chair of our county. Henry was a friend. it was one of those things where I showed up and I voted on my own behalf. It was one of those, everything's a conspiracy. Everything, I mean, anything that happens is, a giant conspiracy by leadership. So I showed up, on my own behalf. Now they'll tell you that, someone said you called whipping votes and blah, blah, blah. Like I really showed up and voted on my own behalf. And they talk about the out of county votes. There were three people there from out of county, and Henry still would have won handily, even without those 3 votes. The reason why Henry won was because, number one, he campaigned. He called everybody and asked them to vote for him. And number two, Michael Heiss and Mark Bazzacco had just written this great big letter trying to remove our executive director because he insulted Michael Heiss on Facebook. And I think everybody was just sick of the drama, which is why Henry won. But, that's another thing that they tag me with is that, I installed the socialist, which is amazing because I just happened to be present in the room. And, now I'm furious JLM, But he used it. It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, watching that kind of propaganda and just these stories they make up or just
the reason I tell that story is because that was the story that was used against me when I announced for chair. All of a sudden there were phone calls to all the leaders around the state, telling them that, I ran Maj out of the party and I caused all this drama in Montco and, things that, I was around the situation, but they were just like blown up astronomically. And it was a situation where a lot of these people had been working with me for years at this point and they knew me, and it, really kind of turned them towards me. But there were other situations. There was a donor that I was working with, to get some funding for the Molten maneuver. And he was like, I don't want to deal with this mess. I'm just, get back to me when you guys want to be professionals. So we lost donors over that stuff. It sucked, but then came the convention, and it was very hotly contested. Everybody was trying to get people there, and we didn't wave 180, which I didn't really expect it to go that way. I think I would have won either way. But after the convention, I made a huge point of going out and talking to Mises leadership, because they really didn't have a seat at the table. My colleagues had really felt prior that they lacked maturity and they were outraged at everything, and bringing them in would be problematic. And I said, no, they deserve a seat at the table. I'm going to integrate them into committees, and, I'm going to help with this. So I did go around the state and meet with a lot of people, and most of the conversations were really good. And I did keep that promise. Most of the people that I integrated onto committees during my time in chair were Mises. There were a couple times where there was a hiccup where there was somebody who I'd said I would appoint to social media, and then he came out really hard against the Molten maneuver. And I'm thinking to myself, how can I put you in a place where you're supposed to be promoting our wins when you believe that we're overselling our wins? I did eventually put him there, but I had some real hesitation about him being able to, properly articulate what we were trying to do when we weren't really on the same page. But, overall, the integration into the committees, number one, either they didn't really do much, or number two, it turned into a brawl. And some committees found to a halt and stopped working. Other committees just had fights 2 or 3 times a week where everybody was arguing. It was rough. It was really rough. And when it came to the board meetings, organizational sabotage is the only way to. My meetings started out being 4 hours, and they went to 6 hours, they went to 8 hours, and people don't really understand how little power the chair has. Just right out of the gate, adding things to the agenda without putting them there in advance. The agenda was a political football that we would debate for 2 hours. Just going through the nuance of policies. Trying to edit policies there on the floor, and people would send the policies, and I would ask 2 or 3 times, will you please send us the wording of this policy so that people can workshop it before we get there? And they just refused to do it, and then they would want to talk about it. We spent probably a quarter of our meetings with them trying to remove our executive director. It just it was nonstop. There wasn't a time that I laughed that I didn't have a tension headache. The meetings were just, and then as soon as Mises had majority of the board, that's when they started kicking out reps. Like they just started removing valid board reps. I'm telling you what, our very last meeting, it came to our attention that there were problems with our bylaws as if I were seating out of state delegates. I'm sure you've heard this story. And that, it may not be legal to do so. So I called a special meeting, and immediately the first thing they start trying to do is remove reps. This person shouldn't be on this call. And it came down to everybody is screaming, appeal the ruling of the chair, appealing the ruling of the chair. And I'm like, I just want to vote about whether or not we're going to have this meeting, because the vote was obviously going to fail, right? We had 21 and we needed 23. Weren't going to get there. We'd already been arguing for half an hour. I told him, I'm like, Michael, Mr. Heiss, if you interrupt me one more time, I'm going to have you removed from this meeting. He yells, appeal the ruling of the chair. And I'm like, please remove Mr. Heiss from this meeting and mute everyone else. We proceeded with the vote. A couple people changed it to a no vote. I said, the vote fails. Everybody have a good night. I'm going to go read my daughter Harry Potter. And then, of course, there was now you can see she's an authoritarian dictator, and it's they even asked me, they're like, when did this, become a dictatorship? And I'm like, right now. I think I saw that. Because this vote's going to fail, right? Are we going to spend 2 hours doing this? It was just to the point, it was beyond ludicrous. I couldn't anymore. When it came time to chair the convention, there were just too many liability issues. And nobody close to me blamed me, because I knew that it was going to be, number one, I had credible information that they were going to try to push through out of state and then throw me under the bus for it. And I didn't have time to get legal counsel about whether that was going to actually be a problem. They had been threatening and hostile for months. And, I really believed that they were going to remove me as convention chair anyway. And really, I think that what they're really mad about when they're calling me a coward and everything else is they didn't have one more chance to make me miserable. I didn't give it to them because, like I said, I have that situational awareness where, when it's time to walk, it's time to walk. You guys want it more than I do. You can have it. I mean, it's a little political party that gets 2% of the vote, right?
No, exactly. So can you speculate on their motivation for why you think they were so disruptive just through meetings throughout your chairmanship? As you were saying, it basically you were just drawing meetings out. Was it just a making you look bad, or what was it?
I think it was making me look bad. I think to them, this is sports. It's like a sports game, right? They stay on and discuss it afterwards for hours, like it's Sports Center. I think that they think it's fun. I really do. I think the meetings will be easier now for them. At least I hope they are, that they'll be able to get more done because they're not purposely trying to disrupt me. And it was always the same couple people. I had a couple people bring it to me that my opponent might have just been a sore loser. I don't know. It's hard to talk about motives. It could be anything. I don't like it when they talk about my motives because they're almost always wrong. It just... And that's the thing, is we've developed this culture of character assassination and questioning each other's motives that really sucks. And it never used to be like this. We always had weirdos, but now we have evil clowns, right?
So when they were
getting memed. That's totally getting memed.
So when they were removing reps, did they give actual reasoning for it? Even if it was the reasoning was a pretext that they had. Oh
yeah. It was fantastic. It just it's the rules didn't they actually seated a county. They were appealing the ruling of the chair to override the bylaws. It was ridiculous. We had a county that only had 11 signatures and they needed 12, and they gave this county a seat on the board with only 11 physical signatures, which the interesting part is that was the very first thing that came up. Was in prior terms, whenever somebody got to 12 members and they approached us, we said, go ahead, you have your board vote. We never made them go get the signatures. And then they contested that at the June meeting and said it needs to be a physical petition. I said, no, it doesn't. They appealed the ruling of the chair. They lost. They brought it to the judicial committee and said, yes, we need to have 12 signatures. So then when one of their Mises counties comes up and needs 12 signatures, all of a sudden they didn't need 12 signatures anymore. So they seated, that board rep. But then we also have a policy to only have 7 voting members on each subcommittee. And that's just a good governance thing. Of course, it's been spun into this conspiracy that we are trying to limit me to being on these committees. But like our 46-person board should tell you why you shouldn't have 46 people on a committee, right? I mean, it was just good governance stuff. It wasn't meant to keep anybody off. But there were plenty of committees that had more people. And we just decided that we were going to grandfather them in and kind of like, lose them by attrition. So we had a committee where they didn't like the board rep because she wasn't going to vote their way. It was the membership committee, and they had a vote within the committee about changing their board rep, and she won, but there were 8 votes instead of 7. So they contested it, and then the body of the voted and they removed her. But the thing is, there were other committees that had more than 7 people. They didn't try to remove them. The elections committee had like 12. I know I'm going I feel like I'm going way into the weeds, so hopefully you guys are following me.
No, you're good.
But, it just the rules only apply to other people, not to them. And I just felt like my sense of fairness was being abused because I would seat their people, whether I liked them or not, without any argument. But then it became appeal the ruling to the chair. We're going to make this into a fiasco whenever it was someone they didn't like. And when it came down to the convention, it was the same thing. I decided not to chair the convention for liability reasons. They've been throwing around threats of lawsuits. Even now, they're arguing about paying, their contractors and stuff from the convention. I'm trying to not look at it, but I still am getting, which that's their problem now, not mine. But, I just knew there was a lot of liability of being involved with this organization after our audit and everything else that went on, not to mention the fact that I was just surrounded by people that I don't even want to know. So, I decided not to chair it, and I was very clear in my email to them that I am not resigning. I'm handing the gavel to the vice chair. And they declared the chair vacant and appointed someone else, which really was just kind of a dirty move because the chair was not vacant. And they knew the chair wasn't vacant. But, I think that they intended to remove me in the same fashion, but I didn't give them the opportunity. So I wrote a little bit about that in my statement about why I didn't chair. And I still to this day think it was a good decision. And I don't think that I was abandoning my friends because my friends knew and they understood, and they knew that, the ones that were noted, I'm going to help them get on the ballot. So,
it was interesting to see what actually went down at that convention too. I'm sure even though you weren't there, you're pretty familiar with it.
Yeah.
The whole, especially the whole Daryl Brooks thing.
Well, that was another thing. I didn't want to be presiding over that on the TV cameras. I knew that was coming. He actually worked as a paid petitioner for me. And we had to try to meet with him 4 times because he kept not showing up, which, is not an abnormal paid petitioner thing to happen. But he wasn't real reliable, on that front. But I would caution anybody who's going to be working with paid petitioners this year is, have them meet you somewhere. Don't go and try to meet them because you won't get them. But that's the kind of knowledge that I wasn't able to pass on because nobody asked me. I have productivity metrics and stories about all these people.
Yeah, and I know Heiss said that he wasn't really aware of Brooks's past when he nominated him too, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. That's the thing is I didn't talk with any of him about it. Joe Solosky had gotten a call saying that they might run him, and I knew about it well beforehand, but I didn't. And then it kind of faded out, so we didn't know if he was going to run or not. Ultimately, he was ineligible. So
no, I know that. I think that kind of demonstrates a level of incompetence too there in terms of they're not looking into him, and they're not even looking into him enough to know if he's eligible to run.
Yeah.
But,
well, the only time they've ever won any elections in Pennsylvania is out of spite for me because, at some point I told them they didn't care about elections. So they stand up and make sure that they go and get, a few people on the ballot because to prove, Jen Moore wrong.
Oh, yeah. Because
you're saying he was on their plan for a while and they had more than ample time to take 5 minutes to Google his record?
Oh, yeah. At least a couple of months. I heard about it at least a couple of months prior. So.
There were so many articles about him too. It's not like you'd actually have to do a background check or something like that.
Right.
This is not deep opposition research here. This is 5
minutes
on Google.
As soon as you
Right.
Google them, it's there. But they do have a history of running criminals, so that's a whole nother. But in retrospect, looking back on it, I actually think that I could have had a good year with a lot of the Mises people that I talked to and met, because we really, I feel like I did hit it off with some of them, and we had a good start. But it was really attacking the Molten maneuver that drove that wedge, and I. Whether that was on purpose or not, it worked, because when they started talking about these just being dog catcher roles and we need positions with teeth, I mean, that was a really good way to piss me off. So, because I'm a township auditor myself, and I know how much work it is, and I know how much, it gives to my community. Unfortunately, I'm no longer a registered libertarian, so you can strike me from those roles. But, I served as a libertarian auditor for 5 years. And they are the most important people in the party. These, like, if you don't start with these small elections, where do you start, right? We're building our bench, and everybody in my township would call me and ask me what the libertarian position on things were. I have a good relationship with both the Democrats and the Republicans. So, and people in all of these roles get a lot of work done and make us more visible, and they'll go on to win larger races someday as long as they're supported. So I think that by attacking that and saying that none of this was important and we were wasting money on it, that was a really, really good way to divide me and them, and it worked.
I've always thought it was interesting how the LPPA is considered one of, if not the most successful affiliates in the country, and Mises still put so many resources into trying to take it over. I know there was the alternate event they had in 2021 where they paid their speakers to come speak over the speakers that were at the convention. It seems odd that if it's really about like maximizing the potential of the party, that they would put so many resources into an affiliate that already seems relatively successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how you measure success, I guess. I mean, they don't think the things that we were doing were worthwhile. One of the things that when I came in, that I wanted to do was win more elections and have legal counsel available to people when they went through ballot challenges, to be able to tell them this is worth hiring a lawyer or not, or whatever. And we've done that. And that's another thing to look at. We left Mises with, I don't know, like $45,000 in the bank, like 110,000 in receipts this past year, 208 elected officials, about 1,600 members. I mean, everybody will need to watch and see where that goes under, their watch, and if they can keep it up, because it does take, constant effort. Is vice chair and as chair, I would put at least 2 hours a day into the job. I really liked being a vice chair a lot more than I liked being chair. Chair, I just felt like I had to set aside an hour to listen to people complain every day. And there were some people where it's like, okay, you've already wasted so much of my time that I'm not taking your calls anymore.
That's fair.
So, I mean, it's just the way it was at the end. I mean, there were definitely things that I could have done better. I'll never ever in my life even blink at facing down a hostile boardroom, though. Because I've done it. I've been there, and I survived it. So it can't get much worse in my career.
So knowing what you know about the internal structure of the party and what it takes to run a state party, do you think they're going to be successful in running the LPPA and even the party at large?
I think that it's going to be very difficult. One of the biggest, things that I think about right now, this week afterwards, is the fact that, Kevin left, I left. They had 5 months to ask us what our day-to-day looked like, and nobody did. There's going to be a lot of reinventing the wheel going on right now. I think that the LP goes through cycles like this. I don't think this is the first time, and I think that's why it's so important that I get on and give these interviews, because there have been plenty of times where they've started to build something beautiful, and then it's all crashed back down. I think that things are going to slow. I hope that they hit the ground running and are able to raise the funds that we did and, get people on the ballot. It's not as easy as, people think it is, though. It's a lot of dedication and work. And, I think that they'll have more success than some people are giving them credit for. But I don't know that they're going to be able to, bring themselves up to the level that we were at when we stepped away very quickly. I mean, there's a learning curve, especially when you're, starting from scratch.
What do you think their end game is? Like, are they going to be trying to win a bunch of little local elections, or is this just kind of like a platform for them?
I think it's a platform. I don't know that the elections are as important. I think that they're more into like protest and education and, things that I don't consider, political party work, but I guess they do. It seems to me that you would be better in some other kind of an organization if you were, trying to do that kind of stuff. But
right, because there's Students for Liberty. There's, I guess YAL. There's so many different organizations out there already that. Yeah, why don't you leave the political party thing to people that want to do political party things, which is get people elected? Like, why try to, take over a political party and not get people elected when you can go invest your time in Students for Liberty or something like that? Like, yeah, what's the point? It just seems so silly that there are people that view the LP as or it should be a messaging platform when that's not what political parties do.
No, the political part, and that was something that I always said, is it should be the candidates. Like, you can go up to like, an 8 out of 10 edgy when it comes to the candidates, but when it's the party, it's got to be like a 4. Because I'll give the example of where I learned this, right? It was Arvin Vora and the, soldiers are moralist murderers thing. The XCOM, I was not on the XCOM at the time, but the XCOM of our party came out with a resolution against this because our Eastern Vice Chair was, a recent vet, and he they decided that, that these words don't represent us, and the membership went ballistic. About 30 or 40% of them was like, the XCOM doesn't speak for me. How dare they put this out on LPPA letterhead? It was not worth the internal battle. Like, it made it 10 times worse for the XCOM to take a side on that. Whereas if a candidate would have said it, that this does not represent me, it would have been different. So, I agreed with them. I don't like hearing that kind of stuff out of leadership. But, that's the problem, is that, so you've got like the one side who is like freaking out because the party, or somebody, in leadership of the party said this horrible thing. And you've got the other side freaking out because the party stood up against it. It just escalates the flame wars. That's why the party shouldn't be messaging. Neither side of that was a good scene. So I really took that to heart, watching other people's mistakes. And, as chair, I wasn't going to go out there and put out, a statement about COVID, because I was going to piss somebody off no matter what I said.
No, that's true. So as far as the governor race goes right now, are they going to actually have a candidate? Or I know there was the NOTA at the actual convention. I've kind of heard conflicting things about whether they can put someone in there now.
Well, in my opinion, they cannot put someone in there. I think it's pretty clear that the convention chose NOTA, and that was a choice. They are, of course, using their, their interpretations, which, are sometimes quite strange. And I guess they're going to nominate someone. Hopefully it flies under the radar. Everybody's talking about it a lot. It could be challenged, and these people could lose the ballot. They may go to court and they may win. It's a toss-up. If I would have been at that convention and I was giving advice, I would have told them that they needed to put somebody in that slot. That person can drop out next week, and then the board is within their right, but you needed to have a placeholder. A placeholder instead of NOTA would have been the proper procedure to make sure that you were going to be in compliance with our bylaws in nominating someone. But, they've got the mess that they've got now, unfortunately. Even more egregious to me sounds like the way the delegates were chosen. Like, people signed up on a sheet and they said they were taking the first 49, but they didn't. They had a whole separate list that they accepted sight unseen, is how it's been described to me. But again, I wasn't there.
So a pre-planned list?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
And was that list mostly or predominantly Mises?
It's all Mises.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, is that can even be questioned because of the out-of-state delegates who voted on it. So, they were not legal electors in the state of Pennsylvania. But I'm not going to fight those battles. I'm not going to sue the party I used to belong to, or I just don't have any interest in that. But things are, toxic enough right now that I wish them luck, because, there's just a lot of stuff that's out there brewing.
Do you think there's a good chance they'll end up running into some kind of challenges from?
Oh, probably,
Yeah.
probably. If not internal, then the Republicans will jump on that. They don't want us splitting their vote. I mean, it's just all of this is a liability, and it's so heartbreaking because so many people put in so much work to this stuff to lose on a court case. That's every year when it's challenge week for ballot access. That's like the worst week, and I grieve with every one of those candidates every year. So I'm glad to be stepping away from it because it's really a roller coaster. It's funny because I don't talk about my emotions about stuff very often, and as a woman in politics, you really can't. But one of the things that I've noticed recently is out of the new leadership, some of the stuff they say to people, like if I would have said that, they would have called me emotionally unstable.
Do you have any examples, or is that kind of like a confidential thing?
It's not confidential. You've stuff like you've turned this thing I was trying to work on into a pile of shit. Like I couldn't say stuff like that. Like I would not. That would be from a woman. That would be seen as an outburst. So I just look at it and shake my head because I mean it does exist.
So in terms of what people who aren't in the Mises Caucus should do, I know you left the party.
Mm-hmm.
For the people that are there, do you think resisting the Mises Caucus takeover is worth it, or is it better to pursue activism through other avenues?
I think that you should focus on your county. If your county isn't overrun, keeping your county strong, I think that they're going to weather this. Because like I said, it's cyclical. These things come and go, and people will lose interest and move on. If you have a good county, keep your county strong, run your local candidates. If your county is overrun, like mine is, and they're people I would really rather not ever see again as long as I live, work on something else. I used to be the director of a crisis pregnancy center in town, and I did a lot of welfare to work type initiatives. And, I know that I helped improve people's lives. I helped them get jobs and move up and get off government assistance. And I did more probably for those people than I did in my 5 years with the LP. So, wherever you decide to contribute to your community, there's going to be, good work that can be done. But if you really want to do the political angle, a lot of what you want to do can be done without the party as well. With the exception of nominations, you can just focus on a candidate that you believe in, there's definitely ways to go about it where, if there's people that you don't really feel comfortable associating with or sharing space with, stay around and wait it out. There may be a time where I come back, depending on the lay of things, but I don't think it'll be in the next few years.
And I was going to ask if you thought there's any chance it could be salvageable in the future, because I've kind of wondered because since they haven't been in power in most states, they've had something to fight against and they've had someone to blame whenever something goes bad. But I have the feeling that once they're actually if they do a full takeover of the party and the party either doesn't improve or gets worse, they're really not going to have anyone to blame but themselves. I think they might lose interest.
They're already blaming, me and, the former leadership. I keep seeing former leadership comments. It's amazing to walk into a room and have people staring you daggers like they hate you and you've never met them. It's just unreal, the level of aggression that is going on these days. But oh yeah, they're already talking about how we're not helping them and how we abandon everybody. And it's I just don't understand the sense of entitlement. This is a volunteer job. You are not entitled to my time or energy, and quite frankly, I gave you more of it than you ever deserved. So at this point, I would like to maybe get a PhD. It's time to focus on my career. I've been in my current job for about 4 years. It's probably time to move up to the next stage. I work in healthcare finance. I manage a team that does billing, customer service. But it's time to look into those things and focus on my family. And from there, I've had several liberty organizations reach out to me and ask me to get involved. And I may take one of them up on it. But, for right now, I just know that there's people that I don't want to associate with. I don't want, to walk in the room and have people yelling corruption,
It's funny because they...
Go on, Jeremy.
Okay, yeah, it's funny because they haven't even updated the website yet.
Oh, no. Is my picture still on there?
Everybody's, yep. Yep, the entire. Yeah, everybody's
Come on,
still.
man.
Yeah, everybody's still up there. They haven't even managed to update the website. It's just.
Well,
it's
our
like,
our IT guy is wonderful, and I'm sure that he's got a lot on his plate. It's been it's been. I mean, his committee has really been under a lot of scrutiny lately because there's a lot of asks that people have of him, and some of them are not quick. So, they're things they're working on, but they're projects that, maybe 2 or 3 months out, and, everybody's all about instant gratification. So but yeah, it's, I wrote kind of my experiences as chair, and I sent that to the correct groups, and I wrote up my, reasons why I didn't chair the convention, and, put that out into the world. And I interviewed with David Valente before I stepped down. And now I'm talking with you guys. I think it's important to get the other side of the story out into the room, or out into the world, because a lot for the longest time, it's just been them. I have not really responded to them, calling me corrupt and, spreading all of these, blatant lies, because I didn't want to escalate it. I didn't want to give them any hate to monetize. So I just kept my head down and kept working. Whereas you see, like, my friends over in the cathedral group, like, they escalate it, and it just, but then it's just like, going back and forth and tit for tat, and like an eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind, right? So yeah, they love to peg me with the cathedral crowd, and a lot of them are my friends. I was in the chat around the time that that I was elected, because they were whipping votes for me, and I asked to be added back into the chat again, right before this convention, because I was curious about the plans. So for the most of the time I was not in there, but I do keep tabs with those guys. So, anybody who thinks I'm dishonest about that or whatever, there you have it. I have, I have been in their chat group, and, am right now. So, but, that doesn't, make me an admin on the page or anything.
Right.
So,
Do you think there are Mises members in Pennsylvania that are kind of going to see what goes on once they take over and maybe think twice about it, or you think the group think it's so strong?
There's already people who have been given orders that they weren't comfortable with, or disagreed on something, and were removed just within the past few weeks, that have kind of come and said, we're sorry. That's the thing, is I think everybody is so in their echo chambers that they don't really I got a lot of support for deciding not to chair the convention. Like, a lot of people reached out to me and said, thank you for not putting yourself through that. People that I didn't expect to hear from. The same goes for them. I think that they're in their echo chamber. They think that nobody has any criticism of them. And the problem is, when we do try to get together and talk, it's like such a shit show that, like, it's not even like, I'm not going to spend my precious time sitting in a chat where everybody berates each other. Yeah. I think that people will go both ways, like they always have. People have dropped out of, the more pragmatic group and gone over there too. It ebbs and flows, but I don't think that this level of intensity and, this level of outrage is going to be sustainable. It just isn't. And they're going to have to find a new boogeyman now, because, like, after this interview, I don't really have anything scheduled. They can call me whatever they want to. I said that in my last statement. Call me whatever you want to, but just stop calling me. So, the people, and I when I say that, it doesn't mean that, like, if a candidate or someone who needs my help on something, or needs advice to look at their papers or whatever, if they need me, I would be happy to advise them. But I just kind of want to be the ghost in the machine. I don't want to have any visibility with this party right now, because it's just, there are some really terrible people that I don't want to associate with.
That's understandable.
Yep.
So we've talked mostly about the Pennsylvania state party so far, but in terms of national, how do you, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but how do you feel about the potential 2024 ticket of Dave Smith and Maj Toure?
I think it's awful. I think that's a good way to destroy the party. I just, like, it's hard for me to fathom anyone thinking that those are good candidates. If that's what the LP is, I'm not a libertarian, which, I've come to terms with. So, it's, I just can't imagine running those two with, the type of discourse and, some of the history of, debating the nuance of things that are just, quite frankly, awful. I don't know. I feel like the entire world's gone insane.
Does feel that way
It's
sometimes.
because it has.
Yep.
It has.
You're not alone in that feeling.
Archie, do you want to weigh in with anything?
Well, okay, sure. I will echo some of her thoughts regarding being chair in a situation like that. I'm not going to do any kind of deep dive into the Vermont LP right now because it's still an ongoing situation. But when you said certain things about how they treat you, it's like, yep, I have felt those same stab wounds in my back. I mean, they play by, they demanded a separate rule book for their opponents and for themselves. And
do.
It's blatant and they don't care.
They show up with their own agenda. Like they have their own agenda for everything, or they try to organize counties on their own and they miss vital steps by circumventing the procedure that we have in place. And then they're mad at you about it. Like, they're, why do we have to do it your way? It's like, well, that county didn't get the resources they need and they didn't turn in what they needed to turn in because you didn't, we would have helped you. Like, we're here to help you, but you're not letting us. Yeah, showing up with, the side agenda every single time. It was everything you can do to undermine leadership. And then it was like, see, this is why we deserve a better chair. Robert's rules was not meant to fight a civil war. It was meant for groups of people who want to accomplish things together, right?
Yeah.
Well, can any set of bylaws really do that, though?
No, I think that the LP structure is just systematically flawed in such a way that I don't know that it can be helped. I don't think there's ever going to be the will to do the restructure that we actually would need to have to be a successful organization. That is kind of the sunk fallacy cost for me too. I know that many before me have said that. I don't think within our current structure there's any hope.
Yeah, it seems very vulnerable to a takeover, which we're seeing right now.
And I wonder how many of those people who show up, at a convention and, are loud and belligerent, are actually going to show up to do the work later. That's been another thing. We've had a lot of county takeovers, and there was only one time that I got involved, and that was because I had a credible threat of disaffiliation on the table, where they reopened an adjourned meeting and had a meeting where they elected officers and chose bylaws without any notice. And so I went to the county and I said, for the love of God, please hold a proper meeting and do this internally so that it doesn't have to come before the state board, because I don't want to preside over a disaffiliation motion. And they actually did the right thing and they did it. A couple of people who were there laughed in my face, Mr. Heiss among them. But, the county did decide to do what was right. And they're very bitter that I showed up and asked them that. But the LPPA is just like the LNC, where we don't have any, is disaffiliation or nothing, right? There's no other, but there were plenty of other counties where they would reach out to me and they'd be like, Jen, this, all of the normal suspects, right? This group of belligerent, loud Mises people rolled up into our county for our officer elections and argued with us about our local documents and bylaws and, with crazy interpretations that don't make any sense, and tried to steamroll the process. And I'm like, there's not really anything the state can do. That's you guys have to handle it. It happened in a lot of places, and in a lot of places they were successful with the tactic, and then they immediately, changed the bylaws in such a way that it was, more takeover proof. So, we saw a lot of them go that way, and it's really, really sad because some of our most successful affiliates are just empty shells now because of that kind of stuff. And, the activists have wandered off and I'm telling you what, before in the past few weeks, we have lost our chair of membership, finance, the judicial chair stepped down, membership, finance, judicial, legislative action stepped down, our eastern vice chair and western vice chair both resigned, our executive director resigned, we've had multiple county chairs resign, we actually had 2 other people on the JC resign. It's just I
think we just lost sound.
Yeah, Jen, it sounds like your mic became unplugged or something.
Put subtitles on. Well, this is awkward. So anyway, we're talking about a Libertarian Party.
I can't hear you.
This is almost like the Libertarian Party
Yeah,
platform. Nothing.
Yeah, we lost. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can give us hand signals or something, and we can just how to use those flags on ships and everything.
She can obviously hear us, so
Yeah. Yeah, it went out. It went out like mid-sentence.
She's been hacked by Russians.
The mic is not connected. So yeah, the computer lost.
try turning it off and turning it on again. Oh, she listened.
Yeah, looks like she'll try to.
Hilditch, how are you?
I'm good. As I said in the chat,
It seems like it almost seems like Hilditch is the one who took her mic out, because Hilditch pops in and then 15 seconds later she's muted.
That's definitely it.
I didn't have one, so I thought I'd borrow hers.
Let's just blame Hilditch, because that's the perfect way to do it.
May I take it all day long? You can blame everything on me. Don't worry.
Oh, John, the batshit crazy lady is in the comments.
Which one's that? Who?
Which
one? I call her Karen. It's a term of endearment. Here we go.
And above that comment, oh no, not Hilditch. Yeah, hello, Zach. I'm back.
Let's see if Jen's gonna come back in.
Are you asking a question about optics, Carlin? Is that a question about optics? Because that looks like optics to me, which you said you didn't care about.
Why doesn't Carlin join us right now? Or are you a coward, Carlin? Would you like to join us? Come on, I'll give you a stream link right now.
Going from Jen to Carlin would be quite the
be an interesting episode.
Oh, that would be a trip. I am not high enough for that.
Okay, let me send Jen a message and see if she's coming back in or not.
And then we can send a message to Carlin.
You guys talk amongst yourself for a second in case anyone's still watching.
We can get Billy Bob.
I don't want to
we got nine
Billy
people
Bob
watching.
Billy Bob and Carlin. That would be an interesting episode.
I mean, I could start reading about Titanoboa again like I used to.
Yes, do it. We got to do it.
We could actually do quite the pay-per-view type thing with just Hilditch and Carlin.
Oh God, that would be. I'd pay money for that.
Is this the OnlyFans pay-per-view there, Archie? Or because I'm not interested in that.
Apparently, we're flailing.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Karen. We'll take your very crazy opinion into careful consideration as we write it down here and throw it in a furnace.
I have to say, Colin, you say that we don't know how to run a stream, but you are watching us.
Jen is back.
Jen's back? Okay.
Yes.
Yay! Welcome back.
Welcome back, Jen.
Is that the Hitler went to heaven lady?
Yes, that's the best insane lady.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there's something about her. I'm just I do not like you at all. I barely interact with you, but I don't like you.
I've never met her, and I hope I never do.
I had an interesting conversation with her the other day, I will say. But
I think my power flipped on and off. We're getting a pretty bad winter storm here, so.
Oh my.
It hardly ever snows in Pennsylvania. My kids and I actually volunteered in animal rescue, and we had to go out this morning. And the roads were actually bad. And I say that being originally from West Michigan, so if I say they were bad, they were actually bad.
I'm originally from Connecticut, now I'm down in Florida, so it's a little bit of a difference. But
a little bit of a difference.
You complain when it gets down to 60 degrees now, so.
I do.
Yeah,
so you're getting a question, Jen. Carlin wants to know why you're such a coward, even though I did invite her onto the podcast and she ran away.
Why I'm such a coward?
I don't know why
she said in the comments.
Yeah, she's she's very, very she's asking it every 3 seconds, so we better
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you that making the choice that I did took more courage than you'll ever know. It was not an easy thing to set aside my responsibilities, but it was the right decision for me based on the liability from this party. I am not going to put my family through it any longer. and you are owed nothing in a volunteer job. I have served my sentence, and we had a qualified vice chair who was perfectly capable and willing to take that gavel.
That sounds like the antithesis of cowardice there. Perhaps Colin would like to come on and explain more.
Well, I mean, or maybe she's just batshit insane, like I said.
Right.
All right. Do we have anything else you want?
It was definitely a, weighing my, it was a list of pros and cons, and there were too many cons.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Nope.
I don't believe
I get it.
It's completely understandable. I mean, yeah, I get it.
I like how you said you
Statement,
served
and it
your
makes
sentence and you also used the word cons. It sounds like this is a giant prison.
You know what? That's what I feel. I feel like I, was set free by not doing this.
Calm down, Karen. Calm down, Karen.
Yeah, she really has it in you, Jen.
Well, like I said, these are not the type of people whose opinions matter to me in any way, shape, or form.
Apparently getting a massage is a bad thing. I like massages.
The massage therapist did tell me that I was very tense. So,
but I mean, and that is an example. That is an example of that propaganda.
Right.
I mean,
that's
what I don't get is
example.
this lady has said like Hitler goes to heaven.
You know why they're
mad?
mad?
Is she criticizing?
You know why they're mad? Because they weren't able to make me miserable, and they weren't able to, humiliate me by removing me and putting Ken Krawchuk in. I didn't play into their bullshit, and I, stepped away. And they can be mad, they can die mad. It's not my responsibility. I hope they're having a good time in the comments.
You know what? If they do die, they can go to heaven with Hitler.
Right. I mean, it's just, I in no way feel bad about the decision that I made. It was the right decision. I weighed it. I discussed it with, everybody involved, and everybody involved was in complete agreement with me that it was the right thing to do. It really, really gets under their skin when they're not able to make me miserable. My last couple of meetings where I was just laughing at how ludicrous the situation was, is they were like, you walk into these meetings and they're just like ready to fight, and you're looking at them like why are you taking yourself so seriously right now? That's just the place that my head's at right now. Is that, I don't believe these people take themselves this seriously. Like, there's so much more to life. And I have a family and a career and other volunteer jobs that, take precedent to the one that I just left. So
there's a comment in the, another comment from Carlin I want to address real quick.
Sure.
So I will say she is right that she has done some stuff against the gripers and all those idiots. There's other people in the party that are trying to recruit those type of people, but I will give her credit where credit is due, and she doesn't like white nationalists from what she tells me. So I guess that's.
But she does think Hitler's going to heaven, which
So
she should talk to Dave Smith about it.
I was going to say that's kind of who I was.
How his fellow travelers.
Who I was talking about with recruiting the gripers,
and doesn't see anything wrong with him and Mr. Spencer.
Is she a Republican or is she a Libertarian? I couldn't really.
I mean, she would talk to Dave, but she needs 12 shots first. That's the only time Dave talks to women. Oof.
Oh. All right.
Well, it's one of those things when you have somebody who, is, schizophrenic or, antisocial personality or something, and they're in your family, you get really sucked into it. And I feel like being in the LP, you get just sucked into that antisocial stuff. And when you step away and you're estranged from it, you look back at it like, why did I ever put up with that insanity? And I'm kind of looking at the LP as like my sociopathic cousin that I've been dealing with for, 5 years that, now I'm just ready. It's like a divorce. Like, when you're done, you're done. I just am ready to be estranged from this entire mess.
Yeah.
Oh, you weasel, John.
Apparently I'm a weasel for giving her credit for something, but I don't know what's going on.
She goes, give me credit, so you give her credit, and then she's like, oh, you fucking weasel, you gave me credit. Hang on.
I don't.
What's going on?
I will never understand reactionaries.
I love the comments on these things. They tell me who to block.
Yes, they do.
She keeps asking when you're going to resign from the party. I don't know why, but she's asked
Well,
about
I mean,
400 times.
hey, Karen, if you had watched earlier, you would have an answer to that. And you know what? We're not going to answer it. You're just going to have to go and rewind the tape and figure it out. Good luck.
When I'm going to resign from the party?
Yeah, she was asking.
Oh, well, when I changed my voter registration, I would have been on the board as the immediate past chair, but changing my voter registration was an effective resignation. And I did reach out to our IT guy and tell him not to move over the email and stuff. I do still have memberships with the party, which I don't, I have lifetimes with both Pennsylvania and national. I don't really intend to do anything with or about those, but I am now registered as a classical liberal in Pennsylvania. And so, that's not an actual party, but I think that a few people came with me, so maybe we'll make one at some point. But yeah, I mean, I did resign from the LPPA board of directors, effectively by changing my voter registration. So that is the answer. She doesn't have to go back and, look at it.
I was going to make her.
Yeah.
That's nice of you.
I didn't have any interest in being on this board when there are so many things that are being brushed under the rug that, are just real liability issues. It's just, I don't want to be involved in those decisions anymore, or because they don't have border officers insurance, I don't want to be responsible for, the financial mistakes either. So I hope they sort it all out. I really do wish them the best, and I hope that everything works fine. I just don't want to be anywhere near the blast radius if it goes sideways. So.
Yeah. When it goes sideways.
Yeah.
You'll get called a weasel next. Woo.
Okay, we have anything else we want to touch on today? Anybody around?
I'm good.
I think I'm going to take an afternoon nap. I don't have to I don't have to read any LP emails. I don't have to prepare any agendas. What happened? Have you guys, Archie, did they have like an agenda fetish? Where like they just would start asking you for like, what were they doing with these agendas? Like they started asking me for agendas weeks in advance. Like no other chair ever had to deal with this. Is there an agenda yet? Is it like, what are you doing with the agenda that you need it? Like a day after the last meeting. Like I don't get it. Like I would usually put them out about a week in advance, but like, I mean, the way that they were just going nuts over getting their agenda, I don't get it. Did you deal with any of that from your Mises people, Archie?
They definitely had their own agendas.
Well, they had their own agenda too, but they didn't like provide any of the motions or any of the feedback on. But like, I don't know. It was very weird. Like now I heard that the new chair has like an agenda committee or something. I'm like, wow,
agenda committee. Oh, geez.
It was obvious. It was obvious they had their own talking points that they kept hitting.
Yeah. Oh, they would have a Zoom meeting right before our meeting, where they, decided how to vote in lockstep and everything. So I guess that's what they wanted the agenda for. But it's funny because I actually hired somebody from the LPPA in my day job as one of my direct reports. And every time I send out a team meeting, he emails me back and asks me for the agenda. And I'm like, come on, man. No. I'm like, there will never be an agenda again. And then I'll be like stumbling over it, and he'll be like, Jen, you really should have had an agenda for this meeting. Like I have it scribbled on a post-it note.
Well, if you're ever looking for a new job, you can join us in Fakertarians.
Yeah.
We pay very well.
Is that a cat I see on your bed there?
Oh yeah, yes. there is a cat.
Please show me the cat. I love cats.
Please show me.
Man, that is one whopping floof. Look at the size of it.
Come here, baby.
Hold on.
He is 18 pounds.
18 pounds? What the hell are you feeding it?
He was 6 years old, and he was just like living on the streets of Philly with a stray colony, and they realized he wasn't feral, and they scanned his chip, and like he had been adopted as a kitten, and the people had moved out of the house like years prior, so they think he'd just been living on the street. I always like to adopt adult cats because I have 2 big dogs. I have a Treeing Walker Coonhound and a Boxer Lab mix, so like I want a cat that's going to be super confident and not like
so you got an 18. I mean, this guy could.
So I got an
18-pound.
Yeah, he's big. I got an 18-pound Russian Blue who lets the dogs know who's boss.
A Russian Blue. Ooh.
He's a Russian Blue. Yeah, I know. That's what my husband keeps making comments about. Us having a Russian cat.
He doesn't have ties to Putin, right? Because we're gonna have to say.
He might. I don't know. Yeah, he's not gonna come over here right now. He looked at me like
taking a nap.
Shit, well, I'm surprised you could even pick him up. I mean, what's
Yeah.
his daily diet? Cement?
You know what? If I don't feed him whenever he asks, he will like rip into the bag of dog food, cat food, whatever. Like it's like he's a raccoon. Like it's not even.
I have this image in my head of the cat coming up to you, wanting to be fed. You go no, and he just goes and devours a child at the local primary.
He comes up and he bats my ankles when he wants it. You know, he's like, he really is. He's definitely my cat. Like I'm the only person where he'll come and sit in my lap, and he comes and he sits next to me for about like 15 minutes every day, and then he's had enough. But I'm surprised I don't have more cats because we volunteered at cat rescue. I was there this morning cleaning cages with my kids. You know what happened is my son, when he was about 5 years old, found out what happens at kill shelters. And he comes to me with like tears in his eyes and his lips trembling. He's like, how do I make this stop in the world? And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be like scooping cat litter on Saturday mornings now, aren't I? So we got involved with this rescue called Stray Cat Blues, and we go every other weekend, and we've been doing it for years now, and the kids love it. And you know what? Scooping that cat litter is way more fun and rewarding than dealing with libertarians.
Well, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? You're picking shit up.
I mean, no,
trying to get it in the garbage.
But like that shit doesn't talk back. You don't have to mute it or kick it out of meetings.
Well, have you tried?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right. On that note, but you guys were great. You know, anytime you want me back, I can come talk to you. So, like I said, I'm trying to lay it low on the activism with the party, but I think I'll be around the movement. You know, I just need to find people that I actually want to associate with. I want to be able to pick my coworkers from now on. And,
join us. Make the Fakertarian party.
One of the things that I, think about often is the fact that, I've blocked all these Mises people because I just don't want to talk to them. But I know that some of them are going to, come over to the other side eventually and, realize that, I wasn't trying to be their enemy. And it's a shame because I'll probably never have that conversation with them now. But at this point in my life, I just need the space. So,
It's the other way around for me. I get blocked by the Mises people.
I block them preemptively. I've gone through a couple of spurts of it, but right now I'm pretty block heavy because I just don't want to deal with it. I'm not trying to.
If you see someone called Josh Hilditch, don't block that person.
Okay, I won't block that person.
Heist has had me blocked for a couple of years now.
I blocked him in 2019. It was after I had just put my dog down. She died of pyothorax. She'd inhaled a grass seed. It was on election day. And he just kept coming at me. And I was like, Mike, my dog just died. Like, stop. I don't want to argue about Maj. And he just kept going. And finally I blocked him and then it was peace.
I mean, he's the most annoying person in the world. He looks like an extra in the Lord of the Rings.
It always surprises me how short he is. Because I'm like 5'9". Yeah, so whenever I'm in a room with him, it always surprises me. But
we should call him Gimli.
Oh, you guys.
Okay, before we say anything too ridiculous, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Yeah,
before I say something too ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay, so Jen, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you much. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to everyone else, we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Buy shirt. Get money. No, other way. We get money. You send money, we get shirt.